Welcome to Project Headcanon. This is the 9th video of the Content Crosshair series, where we take a look at a single piece of Star Wars media to determine its canonicity within the project. Today's video is pretty special, not just for the content that we'll be discussing, but because it's actually the start of a new series focused entirely on this one piece of content. And what content is that? Well, this is my favorite Star Wars game, and one of my favorite video games ever, which is why it's the first piece of Old Republic-era material I'm covering. I won't bore you with a lengthy analysis segment that's just a poorly disguised outlet for relentless praise. Instead, I'll declare right from the start that this game is 100% canonical within the scope of this project. But that's just the beginning. This is the first Content Crosshair video where we're covering a story with several branching plots, each of which can have far-reaching implications on the entire galaxy. So, while it's very easy to say that the game is canon, it's quite a bit harder to decide exactly what happened within the game canonically. And that's where this new series will come in. For this game and others like it, I will create a grand canonical playthrough that will serve as the canonical version of events. Then I can simply treat the playthrough like a linear narrative for the purposes of cutting and editing. This means I'll have to route out a very particular run through the game. The run will have to be pretty completionist, since I don't want to miss out on any content that I don't absolutely have to. But it will also have to be streamlined to make logical in-universe sense. But by front-loading all of the narrative work, the run itself should be both easy to execute and reasonably entertaining to watch. The focus will be on the game's story rather than its gameplay and mechanics, and if you care about spoilers, you should probably stop watching this video right about now. There are a few very important points specific to KOTOR 2 that are worth mentioning. First of all, I'm going to be playing on a heavily modded version of the game. The gameplay-altering inclusions are the Restored Content mod without M478, and Party Swap. I'm also using a ton of graphical mods to make the game look better. I will be using some in-game cheats to make sure I can pass some important skill and attribute checks to access all of the available content. And finally, I'll use an external program called the KOTOR Save Editor to delay certain story triggers and allow me to finish content that I wouldn't normally be able to, specifically on Nar Shaddaa. It's arguable that all that external stuff isn't really official, and therefore shouldn't be considered canon, but I hope the results here will speak for themselves. Now, it may so happen that, despite all of my pre-planning, I end up missing something important, or retroactively decide to change the story to fit better with a piece of content that I cover in the future. If that happens, I am allowing myself to go back and re-record a different version of a part of the run, so long as that version does not affect future segments of the run too much. In any case, I'll try my best to edit out most of the game's UI to make the playthrough as cinematic as possible. Dialogue, cutscenes, computer terminal interactions, and the like will remain, but any pauses, level-ups, menu interactions, inventory management, and the like will be skipped. Finally, here's what you can expect from the run itself. My planet order after Telos will be Nar Shaddaa, then Dantooine, then Onderon, then Korriban, then back to Onderon. The Exile will, of course, be female. I'll use the canonical Jedi Exile mod, so she'll look like this. For her class, I'm going Consular into Weapon Master. I like the idea of the Exile being a Consular before Malachor, but eventually being honed into a frontline fighter by her war with the Sith. I'm not going to use the Exile's canonical name in this run, since it only appears in material published much later. Instead, her in-game name will simply be Exile. I'll make a ruling on her canonical name some other time. Morally speaking, she'll be mostly light-sided, with a few gray or even dark side choices at certain key points. I see the Exile as generally a decent person, but I also want to show how her experiences during the Mandalorian Wars and the manipulations of Kreia affect her. More importantly, I want to avoid casting her as an idealistic goody-two-shoes type of hero. As Kreia straight up tells you in the game, the real war takes place inside her soul. Those light side points should feel earned. I don't want to inject too much of my own interpretations into this run, but to me, the Exile's struggle seems very similar to that of a mental health patient. Assailed constantly from both within and without, surrounded by people trying to help, most of whom, have ulterior motives, and few of whom could ever understand what she's actually going through, in a situation where the greatest victories amount to little more than survival. Which is more impressive, the powerful hero who saves the galaxy, or the clinically depressed person who pulls herself out of bed and does one minor good deed? Man, now I'm starting to sound like one of those big YouTube video essayists. Actually, this game does have vast philosophical and thematic ramifications on the rest of Star Wars, which demand that level of thought be put into this run. Other YouTubers can do a much better job of explaining why, but in the simplest terms, Kreia is basically right. The system of morality imposed on the universe by the existence of the Force is fundamentally incompatible with humanity, resulting in a galaxy locked in a cyclical state of war forever. However, the exile must either reject her teachings, or at least fail to pass them on, in order for the rest of Star Wars to happen. I have a plan for how to address this, but I don't think it will be ready to share for a long time. Anyway, before I get too off track, let me also state that I'm planning to edit the appropriate articles on the wiki as their topics come up in the run, with a final pass after the whole run is complete. This includes adding text that used to be in the behind-the-scenes section because it only appears in the restored content mod. So each time a new KOTOR 2 video comes out on this channel, expect the wiki to already match mostly what happens in the video. And speaking of videos, the first one, mostly a test of my recording and editing process, is already up if you're seeing this. It just covers the game's prologue, with T3M4 repairing the Ebon Hawk. Check that out to get an idea of how the rest of this series will look. Until next time, may the Force be with you.